Hola, welcome to mi ofrenda. Can you say ofrenda? Otra vez, say ofrenda. Nope, no lo dices. You have to roll the R. Uno más. Not bad. Está bien. What's an ofrenda, you ask? That's a good question. Qué buena pregunta. It's the little altar your abuela puts inside of her casa, so she can remind everyone that she still loves Grandpa, and also that she used to be a hot hyena. Damn, abuela! In Mexican-American culture, some people make ofrendas as part of something called Dia de los Muertos. What's that? That's your favorite Mexican holiday? Personally, I prefer Christmas because we get to open lots of tamales. This one has pineapple, nuts, and raisins. ¡Qué sabroso! Of course me gusta Halloween también porque I get to go trick-or-treating in a funny costume. Mira, I'm a monkey. What's that? You thought Dia de los Muertos was just Mexican Halloween? That's what gringas think. But in realidad, it's more accurate to say that it's a left-wing, Mexican-American All Souls Day. That's a Roman Catholic holiday that comes to Mexico from España a really long time ago. You know what else came from España a long time ago? Smallpox. Ay, Dios mío. Also, the end of human sacrifice. ¡Qué buena!
Whoa, Dora! What are you doing showing all of this Aztec cultural history on our channel? Do you want us to get demonetized?
Hola, Papa. I was just telling la gente about Dia de los Muertos.
Oh, that's actually not Aztec culture or history at all. What a relief. You know what, Dora? Why don't you go play some Nintendo? And I'll take over from here.
Sí, Papa.
So, I know you've been told otherwise, but the truth is, most people of Mexican descent living either north or south of the US border had never heard of Dia de los Muertos until like 2010, when it started trending as a really cool Instagram opportunity for hipsters living in LA. That's around the time when images like this started appearing for the first time. But what's weird is that if you look up Dia de los Muertos or hear about it in a newspaper, you're almost certainly going to be told that it's this 3,000-year-old Aztec holiday about how the dead come back to visit at a special time of the year, and so people give them pan dulce and candy? But that sounds exactly like Halloween, right? Well, not quite, because as much as Mexican people never used to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, they didn't really celebrate Halloween in Mexico much either. Halloween is an American thing. What they really used to celebrate in Mexico was All Souls Day, and the ancient Aztec practice of Dia de los Muertos is really just that traditional Catholic holiday, but under a new name that was imposed by Mexican politicians after the Second Mexican Revolution. They wanted to create a new national identity independent of Spain, the Church, and European colonialism. So they turned to an ideology known as indigenism, whereby everywhere that they could, Mexican authorities sought to build their cultural identity around a fantastic reappraisal of Mexico's pre-colonial past, especially the Aztec Empire. And since Catholic priests and Spanish religious chroniclers once wrote about how the Aztec Empire used to celebrate a month-long festival dedicated to the dead, it seemed fitting to merge All Souls Day with something like an Aztec Day of the Dead. Even though no one really knows much about what an Aztec Feast of the Dead is actually supposed to look like. I'll tell you this much, it probably wasn't pretty. Anyway, since there are no 16th century Aztecs here to tell us exactly what people did on the Day of the Dead, or Month of the Dead to be more specific, and since there are really no reliable primary sources describing the actual holiday, they just had to make it up. And by make it up, I mean they just kept on with the established traditions of All Souls Day and made it different, but only just barely. Both holidays involve going out to cemeteries to visit deceased loved ones. Both involve little memorials with photos. Both involve leaving offerings of flowers and sometimes little treats. In fact, both holidays are on the exact same day, November 2nd. It's almost like they're the exact same holiday, but there are two key differences. One, you don't necessarily go to church on Dia de los Muertos. Instead, usually there's a parade. I think that was the point. And two, Dia de los Muertos has lots of skulls and skeletons.
They call them calacas.
That's right. And that's not to say that Christianity doesn't have lots of skulls and skeletons, but not really necessarily on All Souls Day. Surprisingly, that was more of an All Saints Day sort of thing. And if you don't believe me, you should look into the tradition of Catholic relics and reliquaries. You'll be surprised by what you find. But allegedly, the calacas of Dia de los Muertos are based on ancient indigenous death worship. But in reality, the art and depictions of skeletons on Dia de los Muertos can be traced to one man, José Guadalupe Posada, a 19th century Mexican lithographer that loved making political cartoons and social commentary featuring his calacas. Lots and lots of calacas. But José Guadalupe Posada's art was political and not religious in nature. It would take another group of people who viewed politics as religion to go one step further and bring what we know as Dia de los Muertos today to life. The American Chicano movement. The earliest recorded instance of Mexican Americans actually celebrating the Day of the Dead instead of Halloween, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day is in 1973 when a Chicano institution called Self-Help Graphics, that's the name, celebrated what very well may be the very first contemporary Dia de los Muertos festival ever in East Los Angeles. In fact, Self-Help Graphics is still doing it today, and 2023 is their 50th anniversary. And it's here, with Self-Help Graphics in Los Angeles, that we see all of the elements that have given rise to the emergence of Dia de los Muertos as every white girl's favorite Mexican holiday. Skull makeup, orange marigolds, stuff that sort of looks like something an Indian on TV might have done, parades, probably some dude selling corn, and a big hippie drum circle. And you know something interesting? Try as hard as I may, I can't find any images of Dia de los Muertos that are older than the ones taken of Self-Help Graphics in East LA that look anything like this. If you look at any photos of Dia de los Muertos, even from Mexico, that were taken from the 70s, 60s, or earlier, they look nothing at all like Dia de los Muertos does today. There's no calacas inspired by José Guadalupe Posada, no people dressed like Indians, no parades, not even music. All I can find are images for Dia de los Muertos that all look exactly like the traditional Roman Catholic All Souls Day, a solemn day of prayer in memory and for the sake of deceased loved ones. And sometimes, yes, there were ofrendas, but usually these are all in Catholic cemeteries for a one-night candlelit vigil. Thus, not only is Dia de los Muertos not really a 3,000-year-old Aztec tradition, it seems that it didn't even really exist in its most recognizable format until after the 1970s. In fact, the earliest intentional usage of the term Dia de los Muertos to refer to an annual holiday probably comes from around the time of the presidency of Lázaro Cárdenas, the socialist president of Mexico who was also a Freemason and in office from 1934 to 1940. It was during this time that left-leaning politicians and Marxists attempted to divest Mexican society of the cultural vestiges of Spanish colonialism. In this case, they did that by renaming a Spanish tradition and claiming that it was Aztec, when in fact, it was wholly European.
Let's play a game. Is it Dia de los Muertos or is it All Souls Day? Can you tell the difference? Mira, which one is Dia de los Muertos? It's this one. This photo is from Italy. How about this one? Can you find Dia de los Muertos? It's this one. This other picture is from España. How about this one? Can you tell which one is from Mexico? It's this one. This picture is from Los Estados Unidos, which is where Dia de los Muertos, as we know it, was invented by American artists in the 1970s. That other picture is from Mexico.
So to recap, Mexican activists in the early 20th century hated Roman Catholicism because it was Spanish, and so they changed the name to Dia de los Muertos and pretended that the holiday was actually from Mexico's ancient indigenous past. But then Mexican-American activists living in Los Angeles in the late 20th century hated Halloween just as much because Halloween was too capitalist, too American, and too closely associated with middle-class white people living in the suburbs.
Hey, Bobby.
So they happily embraced Dia de los Muertos as a kind of Chicano alternative to Halloween. And that's right, it's like our very own Kwanzaa. But of course, Halloween was still better, and so they had to keep adding to Dia de los Muertos in order to compete. And since they were artists, they loved Jose Guadalupe Posada and his little calacas. And thus now, Dia de los Muertos looks really cool, with all these skeletons and flowers and candles and cementerios and white girls and Disney movies and dulces, and just like Halloween, it's finally a commercial extravaganza. You can buy Dia de los Muertos decorations at Target. Does it get any more white and suburban than that? Dia de los Muertos was a twice made-up holiday, and each time this was achieved by appealing to an idealized past with imagined cultural purity. The creators of Dia de los Muertos wound up inventing something new, because despite their desire to commune with their ancestors, to grasp authenticity, they could only perceive that history through the eyes of people living in the present, and thus whatever they understood about those ancestors was a mere artifact, stemming from their own experiences, prejudices, desires, and ultimately their imaginations. But even then, Dia de los Muertos wasn't really that cool. It was desperate, heavy-handed, and political, which is probably why in the 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s, none of us had even heard about it. No one celebrated Dia de los Muertos. But thanks to Instagram and all these white chicks that love the aesthetic of the holiday so much, Dia de los Muertos has actually become really cool, organically, as people begin to naturally appropriate the holiday for their own purposes, adding their own layer of authentic tradition and actual fun. So even if you're technically not Mexican or don't have Mexican ancestors, don't let any politicians or activists try and take your spooky fun away from you this year, because Dia de los Muertos is about as Mexican as the lowrider being the creation of Americans, and the holiday is about as historical and ancient as disco. And to be honest, it's only fun and popular because people from other ethnicities and cultural backgrounds liked what they saw and started contributing. Most people, for instance, probably first heard about Dia de los Muertos from Disney's Coco, a movie directed by Lee Unkrich, a guy from Chagrin Falls, Ohio. How about that? So don't feel guilty about wearing a mariachi hat and painting a skull on your face. This is your holiday too. Because even though you didn't name it and you're not Jose Guadalupe Posada, you were one of the people that made Dia de los Muertos an international sensation and part of UNESCO's cultural heritage of humanity. As for me, in our house, well, we'll just stick to Halloween, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day. That's 3 great holidays for the price of 1. And frankly, we're not big users of Instagram. But you all have fun out there. Muchas gracias. And adios, muchachos. Oh, bye-bye.